What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Stretch 4 podcast. I'm your host, Peter Tran, and on the line, I got my almost pick and pop partner, Josh Cohen. How you doing tonight?
We're almost there. Not in terms of me getting my webcam to work, but in terms of the season coming.
One day, man, one day.
One day.
Not so much ISO Raj. How you doing?
You know what? We're almost getting to the point where you can just stop talking about the isolating.
You gonna be a banger in the paint again once all this starts?
Yeah, well, if they let the Memphis Grizzlies play, then yeah, I'll be banging in the paint with JV style.
I hope you're better at tipping than JV is, man.
Shut up.
What? It's true, no?
Don't bring that up.
Oh, you know it's gonna come back every
It's a
time.
very painful moment for me.
It's coming back. Don't forget it. It's a piece of Raptors history, my friend.
It hurts too much.
You
Too
know,
soon.
No, it's never too soon. We did an emergency pod that night, Josh. That's how not too soon it was.
I think that was one of the most painful moments of my life.
You must have lived a very good life then.
Not being a
Yes.
Raptors fan until last year anyway. But go on.
Sounds like a lot of privilege that you've had, Josh. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yes. Thank you. As being the only white guy in this call. Thanks a lot.
Sorry. I had to, man. It's taking over the news these days. Obviously, I don't even know how to say this. We share sentiments with everyone behind the Black Lives Matter movement, and you know, it's kind of weird if you don't address it. But at the same time, this is some major NBA news that I think we got to get into, and it's the appropriate time. So today, we're recording on June 4th. The NBA owners all had their call today, and we got a schedule, guys. We've got, how many teams are coming back? 22 teams, 9 from the East, 13 from the West. We're looking at a schedule that includes international players coming to Orlando, I believe, on June 15th. So that's 11 days away, 10 days away. That's quick. All players are going to report by the 21st. Coronavirus testing starts on the 22nd. And then training camp, end of the month, man. It's almost there. We're looking at the end of July as the beginning of, or not the beginning, I guess the resuming of the season. We got 8 games per team. That's for every team that's coming back. And then a possible play-in tournament if the 9th seed team is within 4 games of the 8th seed. I have a question for you guys. Do we really care if Washington is in this or if Phoenix is in this? It's still kind of weird to me that they went to 22 teams instead of 20, but I don't know, Raj, are you going to really watch Phoenix games at this point?
See, what I'm really interested in is how they're going to play out the rest of the fantasy season, but we'll save that for another day.
They actually said the fantasy season's over.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's dead. Come on, man.
Oh, wow.
They
Okay.
released that today at like 4 o'clock.
Well, how can you? Trae Young isn't playing, man.
Yeah, neither is Zach LaVine. It's very important.
Yeah, but just to actually go off for the real NBA news, I think with the teams like Phoenix and San Antonio, it's hard not to include them because they're only 1 game out. Where are you going to draw the line? Like, oh no, they played 1 less game and they're 1 game back. Like, they don't deserve to be there. And I think Phoenix was close enough to be in consideration. I found it interesting how they made the playoff game or the play-in game tournament to be within 4 games, because in the West, it's almost certainly going to happen. There's going to definitely be at least 1 matchup, and maybe there's going to be 2 or 3 teams that meet that 4-game threshold. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I think the NBA was just being nice, and they wanted to create, a situation where teams within the 5 games are going to be allowed in. And this allows for, the Lakers and the Clippers and teams like that, if they're playing those 2 teams, just to have a warm-up game, I guess, or a couple warm-up games before, the playoffs start. So they'll be very good punching bags for the better teams in the league.
Yeah, I mean, come on. It just happened to be that the NBA is looking for, teams within 6 games of the 8th spot. Coincidentally, the Wizards are 5.5 games back. What's the point? Just to make it even? Just so Adam Silver could really force a quote-unquote play-in tournament? Because, I don't know. Even this play-in tournament idea alone is already kind of fishy, right?
Yeah, it's a bit fishy, and I also think with Washington being like just under the threshold, it would be weird if the East only had 8 teams and like they're all playoff teams, so like those games are pretty much warm up, and then the West is like still battling it out between teams like 8 to 13. That's 5 teams that are going to be battling it out for a position. So there has to be some level of quote parity in the league, and I think that's the way by including Washington and Beal, and we got to see a bit more Bertans.
I guess that's really okay, but Josh, do you think there will actually be a quote unquote play-in tournament? By play-in tournament, we mean like 2 games, right? If the 9th seed team is within 4 games, you get a possibility of 2 games for them to win. If the 8th seed team wins the first game, then that's it. Like we're canceling everything. That's it for the wild card spot. But if they lose and the 9th seed team wins, in this case, let's just say it's Portland, then we get a second game. So the 9th seed, aka Portland in this scenario, has to win both games for them to actually proceed or to get the 8th spot.
Yeah, I think Washington is obviously going to be roadkill. I think after a couple of games, they're just going to pull the plug and just not play Bradley Beal. And they're going to play, their bench players a lot more often because ultimately it's not going to matter when they're, 7 games out after a few games. But in the West, I think that there is going to be, the play-in side of things. I think it's going to come into effect. And I think it's going to be really exciting. I mean, we go back to 2 years ago. We've talked about this before, about the Minnesota-Denver game and how good that game was. If we get, 2 or 3 of those types of games where it's, basically winner take all, to actually get into the playoffs, I think it would be fantastic.
Which team do you guys think would actually be coming close to the 9th seed? Or be in the 9th seed in this case?
Yeah, I'm going to jump in and say that it's probably going to be Portland. I think with the bodies they have coming back and a few games I'm assuming they would get in training camp, with Nurkic coming back, I think Collins would be scheduled to come back as well. Dame, who's probably fully recovered from his groin injury. They just have the most weapons, and they are, I think, 3.5 games back of Memphis. And I love the format they went with you have to beat the 8th seed twice to get in. What I'm interested in is what happens if there's 2 teams that are tied for that 9th spot.
Then you have another tiebreaker game. The more tiebreaker games, the better.
It's just wild card of wild card games.
It feels like some sort of scenario like that's going to come up that the NBA hasn't thought about, whether it's that or, if one team has like one more game play, but they have the same amount of wins, which might happen in this case. Like what happens then, right?
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think that New Orleans is probably going to get in. And they might get in straight away, too, because their schedule, just looking at it now, is pretty easy. And it's probably the easiest schedule of all the teams left as well. Whereas Memphis has a pretty tough road. But the good thing is they are playing each other a couple times as well. So we're going to see, the play-in game before the play-in game potentially if those 2 teams end up, in the 8 and 9 and it's still somewhat close. It's going to be pretty exciting as long as we actually play these games, which is an aspect that nobody's really talking about. Like, what if some of the coaches get the coronavirus and somebody gets really sick? Are they going to shut everything down? Probably, right? So that's one thing that nobody's really talking about amid all this excitement.
Adam Silver's come out and said that if 1 or 2 people from a team get really sick, you're just getting quarantined and that's it. Doesn't mean the whole team needs to be quarantined. You just keep testing every day.
I suppose. What if somebody gets really sick, right? Then what happens then?
Like if someone's on their deathbed, knock on wood.
Yeah, I mean, you have these coaches who are like 60 plus years old, and it's come out tonight in a bunch of Woj tweets that Silver wants to ensure that maybe some of these coaches may not even be on the bench. And now the coaches are coming out against that, saying they don't want to be discriminated against because they're old. But I think he's doing what's best for them, right?
I think they also understand, like, who are we looking at specifically? You got Pop, D'Antoni, Alvin Gentry, I guess would be the main guys. I can't think of any of their coaches that are that old. Yeah, that would be it. Maybe, no, Carlisle's not 65. That dude's probably in like his 50s by now.
Isn't Casey in his 60s?
Yo, Detroit ain't in this.
Oh, that's true.
Come on, man. Detroit's not qualifying for anything. Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting because I think the talk right now is that the coaches might be able to go but not sit on the bench, which would be weird and, kind of useless. I mean, if the coaches are in any contact with the players, then what's the point, right? Like, there's no difference on the bench, or if you're there during practice or while these guys are working out in film sessions and scouting reports.
Yeah, and I mean, if they're using a tablet to show the head coach during the timeouts, I really hope they're not using Discord so they can actually be seen.
Josh, man, stop knocking Discord.
Yeah, well, maybe they need a computer that actually works.
You should see my computer right now. It's a mess. Oh my goodness.
This guy, man. What happens? Are they going to send Mike Breen out there? What happens if Mike Breen gets it?
Oh man, if Mike Breen gets it, then shut down the league.
Because you can't have, imagine your play-by-play and your color commentators doing it from home. You know what I mean? These guys are on a Zoom call and there's a 30-second delay on Mike Breen yelling out, "Bang!"
Yeah, Mike Breen wakes up his wife. Honey, not tonight!
Yeah, I think we're going to get a steady dose of Reggie Miller in that case, which is a big problem for us.
Oh, no. The world doesn't need that right now.
No, where's that mute button, man? The other issue, at least with the scheduling portion, is that, who is this? I think Tim Reynolds tweeted out the schedule for all the teams. So the idea is that the teams just progress and play their schedule going forward, right? And then if you have one of the 8 teams that's not involved in this, then you just skip to the next game. So in this case, the Lakers and the Trailblazers are both 2 games short. Then you have the Heat and Magic, who are each 1 game short. I think one of the fairest ways, quote unquote fairest ways to do it would be to have the Lakers play the Trailblazers twice, right? The Magic and the Heat play each other twice, or play each other once. But then, it kind of screws over Portland having to play the Lakers twice.
Well, it depends when those games are scheduled too, right? If it's at the start of the restart of regular season, then it'll be fine in terms of us getting a competitive game because they'll probably play LeBron and AD. But if it's at the end of the restart, then they may not play those guys because they'll be rested for the playoffs.
You think they're going to need rest? These guys just took 3 months off.
I mean, if the Lakers have the 1 seed secured, why would you play those guys in the last 2 games of the year?
No, man, you know the way it is. You get these guys running, and the better in shape they get.
Why take the chance?
Yeah, but I think after 3 months off, well, it'll be 4.5 by the time they start. I think they're going to want these players to have steady minutes, and they might not be trying as hard because they might have locked up the first seed. But actually, I'm looking at it from the other perspective. It would be unfair to the Trailblazers. Let's say if the Lakers are still fighting for the number 1 spot, that they have to play a very good team and the number 1 team in the West instead of playing a team like Chicago in the East, or having to play an easier team like the Bulls or the Knicks.
Yeah, any of the teams that are tanking at this point, usually.
Yeah, like Minnesota.
I mean, you can't really make it fair for everyone at this point, right? The NBA is just trying to do whatever they can to keep it somewhat normal in that sense, but also kind of safe at the same time. What can you really do, to be honest? There's not that many ways to make this equally fair for everybody.
Yeah, I think there's no universal solution that makes everyone happy, like you said. I'm a bit surprised, though, they kept the conferences the same, and there's no reseeding or no discussion of reseeding yet. And if they're playing 8 games, and I don't know how much rest they're going to be putting between the players, but we may see a finals that ends in October, November.
Yeah, I think the last date for the finals tentatively would be mid-October?
Yeah, I think it was October 11th.
Okay, yeah. Because, when's the draft is soon thereafter, right?
I believe so, yeah. I think it's the end of October. And then they would go back in the training camp basically a month after that. And the proposed start of the next season would be December 1st, which, Michelle Roberts has come out against. So that may change. It might get pushed back to what a lot of people talked about in, starting the season as a Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like free agency starts October 18. That's wild.
Yeah, and nobody really knows what that's going to entail either. If the cap's going to go way down and teams are not going to have any money to spend, and a lot of these free agents will have to take like really, minuscule 1-year deals and hope that the cap goes back up next year if things improve in the world. So,
yeah. I was listening to the Windhorse pod, and he said that with these 8 games, so you know how like the salary is split, so that I think it's supposed to be like a split between ownership and players, and then they allot the amounts afterwards. With playing these 8 games for 22 teams, they actually bring in $300 million of revenue for the players alone. If everything were canceled, if they had just scrapped the regular season going forward, they would have lost $465 million.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a crazy difference.
I guess you can see why they're playing the games.
Yeah. And why it's 22 teams instead of 20, right?
Yeah, for sure.
It's 2 more markets, 2 more local TV deals to bring in. I mean, even without fans in the stadiums, you're still getting a pretty decent chunk of change. Whether it's worth risking, 70 people, the infection of 70 additional people, I'm not sure, but it's a lot of dollars, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, with one of the factors that you have to look into is a lot of these teams were not healthy going into the month of March and possibly through the month of April as well into the playoffs. So, I mean, teams like Memphis with Jaren Jackson and Brandon Clark, both those guys were out at the time that the league was suspended. Obviously, Portland with Nurkic and Collins. So, I mean, as long as these players get a good training camp in, which hopefully they will, and a lot of these guys, knock on wood, will actually stay healthy, I think there's going to be a lot of injuries, unfortunately, because, you have a 3-week training camp, and then you're going right into games, and then you're going right into playoffs. So it's a lot of games all at once they do come back. And then throughout the training camp, there's going to be a lot of injuries because a lot of these guys are just out of shape. So it's going to be interesting to see who kept in shape and which team is able to stay somewhat healthy in order to win a couple rounds and make it to the finals.
Low key, apparently Nikola Jokic and James Harden, the 2 most infamous players of playing themselves into shape, have shown like the best looking photos so far. It's like summer all over again. We're watching players like photos as they release them.
I feel like Jokic would not be nearly as good though if he was skinny.
You don't want like too skinny, but you don't want him fat either.
I mean, fat Jokic ran through the playoffs and destroyed everyone last year.
Yeah, but fat Jokic also started the season really slow. Like, metaphorically and physically, just very slow. Do you want that? I don't want that.
It's like a momentum.
I think fat Jokic from the playoffs last year is fine, but obese Jokic from the start of the season is not okay.
Yeah. You just want him to be a big lad.
I want to go back to one point that I found interesting, and I was just thinking about it as we were talking about the money. And the one team that objected the new format was Portland. And then we talked about kind of their scheduling conflict of having to play the Lakers twice. And I think the league knows, even if some teams aren't going to play, like the Knicks, the Minnesotas, they know they don't have much to play for. The games are going to be useless. They might as well give their players an extended rest. On top of it, Portland's in that position where they have all these pieces coming back. And if their schedule was very lenient, they probably have a very good chance of being one of those play-in teams.
The thing is, like, looking at all the schedules, though, like, neither of the 3 teams are actually playing Phoenix or who's the other team?
San Antonio.
San Antonio, yeah. Actually, no, sorry. New Orleans is. My mistake. So there's one game in there that I can see. I don't see any other of those teams on the list here. Yes, I mean, that's one game. So, I mean, if it went to 20 instead, you're playing even tougher competition. So I don't really understand their point of view, to be honest. And plus, who cares, right? Like, Portland has a bad record right now. Who cares what they think?
I mean, obviously nobody cares because it's still going to go forward. But, well, from what the reports are saying is that they wanted a quote-unquote competitive and innovative format that was on the table. So, I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't want to play LeBron twice if I didn't have to. Additionally, you know what I mean?
Well, potentially. It's not confirmed yet, right?
Yeah, it just makes the most sense, though.
It does.
Unless they're not gonna rejigger all of the schedule, like it's already out there.
Portland, choose your opponent.
Yeah, that'd be nice, eh?
Yeah.
How is Portland going to look bringing back Nurkic and Collins? Two big guys. Collins obviously a more versatile defender, but Nurkic was sort of their anchor last year, right? And then obviously we had Hassan Whiteside replace him this year, but Nurkic and Whiteside, Jesus, what a front court.
If I had to estimate what's going to happen, I would say that Whiteside is going to start still, and then Nurkic is going to come off the bench. Because you don't want Carmelo Anthony and Whiteside playing in important games too many minutes together off the bench, I don't think. So I think they're going to ease Nurkic back into playing shape, and he'll play 15 to 20 minutes a game until maybe he's ready for game 10 to wrap up his minutes a little bit.
Yeah.
But ultimately in crunch time, I think Collins is the one that matters the most, because I think he'll be playing the crunch time minutes against most of the teams that end up only playing one big, which most teams do now. And I don't think Nurkic is quite ready to play those hard crunch time minutes yet. So I think Collins will probably be the guy playing the 5.
So what if you had, let's say, let's just pick a generic West team. Not Houston, they're not generic enough. Let's go with Dallas.
Yeah, so I mean, Dallas is going to play Porzingis at the 5, right? So I think
Porzingis
that
plays more of the 4, man. Is Dwight Powell still injured?
Yeah, Dwight Powell's out for the next 6 months. He tore his Achilles.
Yeah.
I don't
he's
know,
out.
man. Porzingis at the 5 though? That guy's so soft. That guy
He's been
hates
playing
playing
the 5 the last 2 or 3 months, and he started to gain chemistry with Luka, and both those guys were finally going off in the same games. So their offense was really taking off, which it was already great. Obviously, it was best of all time level, but he was really starting to gain chemistry with Luka, and that's pretty dangerous for Dallas. They could be a wild card in the West.
What happens if Dallas falls back to the 8?
That's not happening.
With 2 games against Phoenix and a game against Sacramento.
Yeah, I mean, Dallas is a team that could definitely rise, right? I mean, they could get hypothetical home court advantage, which means nothing, obviously, but they might be able to sort of finagle and choose their matchup in the playoffs if they play it right.
Yeah, the West 3 to 6 seed is just a huge mess, right? I mean, we're looking at how many games are we seeing here? 4 games, 3.5, 2.5. 4 games to the 7th seed, 2.5 between 3 and 6. I mean, between 3 to 7 could change so much. None of these teams even look like they're even close to maintaining their position.
I think we can agree that the one matchup we don't want to see in the first round is Utah against Houston again. I mean, based on Bogdanovich being out, and we've already seen that series a couple times, and it's been okay to watch at times, but also very frustrating other times. And I just don't think anybody wants to see that matchup again. Something new.
Nobody wants to see Utah, man.
That too. They're going to be
They're
one
done.
of the easiest outs in the West. So going back to Dallas finagling their position, if they're actually able to get into a position to play the Jazz, I think that would be their wish.
I have an idea. What if Utah falls back all the way to the 8th? Which they could if Memphis just catches a crazy hot streak and Utah just dies off. And then we let Portland or New Orleans just sneak in there instead of Utah.
Sure. I'm in.
Casual. Okay. Thanks.
I want New Orleans in, though, to be honest. I mean, I love Memphis and everything, but Zion, LeBron in the first round would be a lot of fun. Even if it was a sweep, I think it'll be a really high-scoring series, and it'll be fun to watch. It'll be competitive, at least.
No way.
Josh works
Competitive
for ESPN.
is in, within 10 points.
I think the storyline will be attractive. Zion versus LeBron, Lonzo, Ingram, and Hart versus LeBron. The young guns versus the old heads. Davis going back to New Orleans in Orlando. I think the storylines will be good, and I do think New Orleans poses a bigger challenge than Memphis would. But based off of which team I personally think deserves to be in the playoffs, it's Memphis. I think if the season played out and there was only 8 teams to make it, I think Memphis makes it.
I don't know. I think if the season played out, all 82 games, and the coronavirus never happened, I think New Orleans gets in based on their schedule. I think there was the second easiest schedule going forward. And Memphis had Memphis had the toughest schedule going forward. So, with them likely not getting their 2 bigs back within a week or 2 as well, they probably wouldn't have made the playoffs. But now, chances are they probably will.
Yeah, Memphis is looking at Portland, Utah, San Antonio, OKC, Milwaukee, New Orleans, New Orleans, Boston. That's tough. New Orleans has a lineup of Sacramento, easy win. Utah, close. Clippers, obviously difficult. Spurs, easy. Grizzlies, Kings, Grizzlies, Magic. That Pelican schedule
New Orleans
is light.
is what, 4 games back?
New Orleans is 3.5. 3.5 games back.
I don't know. I mean, that's going to be tough. They could control their own destinies in those 2 games against each other, which, it's nice that those 2 games are on the schedule because those are going to be really fun games as long as, Memphis doesn't blow the first 3 teams that they play out of the water. Hopefully it's close and those games actually still mean something.
Yeah. It might actually be really difficult for New Orleans too because they have a lot of guys who are injury prone, right? I mean, you're looking at Lonzo Ball, who was out for like a good chunk of the season, and obviously Zion, who was out for most of the season. If you're forcing these teams to play like back-to-backs a lot, it could be very strenuous on the Pelicans players.
Well, Woj did say that the likelihood is there's only going to be 1 back-to-back during the 8-game period for all the teams. So each team will have to play 1 back-to-back, and there's going to be around 6 games per night.
So we're looking more back-to-backs during the playoffs?
No, I think the playoffs will be spread out where it's like every other day, including the finals, whereas the finals before was like you would play game 1, then you have 3 days in between, then you play game 2, there's 2 days in between, then just 1 game going forward after that. There's a lot of days in between. Whereas now it's going to be every other day you play.
So one on, one off?
Yeah, essentially, because you're not traveling, right? So why wouldn't you play every second day?
Yeah, I mean, ideally. But, these teams always have issues when it comes to playing too often.
Yeah, but I don't think the playoffs will have back-to-backs. I mean, that's one thing that's not going to change.
Yeah. Raj, what team do you think is getting the best advantage out of this?
The best advantage probably goes to New Orleans. Like Josh mentioned, they did have the easiest schedule going forward. And even though you remove some of those teams like the Knicks, the Bulls, the Timberwolves, I still think they face an easier course of teams than the Grizzlies. I think the team that's probably getting the shortest end, because we talked about it, is Portland.
Just because of their scheduling?
Yeah.
You think? I mean, it might be good, even if they're not able to make it into the playoffs. At least they can get Nurkic and Collins some run during the season, right? Might not necessarily be the worst thing for these guys to get a couple of games under their legs, rather than just sitting out like a year and a half for Nurkic, at least.
Yeah, I mean, if they're going to start the next season within a month and a half or 2 months, hopefully these guys will be more in shape by then, and Portland can get off to a better start than they did this year with all the injuries that they had.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, if they end up not making it into the playoffs, we're looking at mid-August? Late August at the absolute latest? So then they'll have at least another 2.5 months off before, that's even before free agency, let alone training camp, right? So that's actually a lot of time for these guys to rest up.
Yeah, and I mean, chances are Portland's not going to make it out of the first round, so they'll have plenty of time to rest up if they need to.
Yeah, notice how we spent most of this podcast talking about the Western Conference teams, and like the East it's pretty much going to be a scrimmage until the playoffs. Like there may be a few seeds that get changed, but overall most teams are cemented where they are. 8 games could mean like maybe the Sixers and Indiana change spots, but realistically that the teams are going to have the same matchups. It's going to be like a warm-up, and the West is going to be like a zoo.
You know what would be really interesting, Raj? If Brooklyn somehow ended up in the lottery. Because they're obviously not going to bring back KD. Kyrie is still hurt. So Brooklyn falls out because they're only half a game behind or ahead of Orlando right now. So Brooklyn falls out, Washington makes it. And then somehow Brooklyn has a lottery pick? Like a top 14 pick? Move that pick for someone to go with Kyrie and KD? Or if they draft somebody really good, who knows, right? That could be the play for these guys.
Yeah, tank their way out of the playoffs. That's genius.
Yeah, and there's no playoff revenue that you're going to get from having a home game. Like, you get the same revenue. It's basically you're building revenue for the league. That's what this whole participating in this 22 team resumption of the regular season is. It's to build up revenue for the league, to disperse evenly for the salary cap. And there's no real incentive to make the playoffs if you're a team that's dealing with massive injuries like Brooklyn is.
Yeah, and I mean, you package that pick, if it's a lottery pick with Karis LeVert, I mean, there's been a lot of talk about Bradley Beal possibly being the third guy in Brooklyn, and maybe, packaging those two guys, or the pick, and then, Karis LeVert, and maybe another pick in the future, another couple players. That might eventually entice Washington to look at that type of deal from not only them, but also other teams as well.
How wild would that be? Brooklyn tanks out, lets Washington get the 8th spot, and then what do they get in return? Bradley Beal for a draft, for the lotto pick, which Washington would end up with anyways.
Yeah, and I mean, Brooklyn's playing Washington and Orlando 3 times in total, according to the schedule here.
I like it, man. Yeah, like, you're going to play, what? Spencer Dinwiddie, Karis LeVert, Taurean Prince, DJ...
Joe Harris.
And Jarrett Allen. Joe Harris. That's it. That's your team. I mean, why not? I'd tank my way out of that. I don't know if the players would want to tank, obviously, but I mean, why not try it? God damn. Is anyone excited to see Jimmy Butler back in the playoffs without Philadelphia this time?
It'll be an interesting storyline. Like, I think Miami, especially if they're not going to have home games, is less of a threat in the playoffs. And I really do think the way the basketball odds are going to play out to who's the favorite to win the league or go to the finals, it's going to be drastically different, because there's some teams that are historically good at home and historically bad on the road. Like, the classic example is the 76ers, and how they play in that environment with no crowd and a neutral site will be interesting, because on paper they're going to be really good.
One advantage they can give the top seeded teams is in the later rounds. Say Philadelphia is playing Milwaukee in round 2. They should allow some Milwaukee fans to come down into the arena, socially distance themselves, and cheer for the Bucks against the 76ers, because in that case the 76ers are guaranteed to lose because they're such a bad road team.
What's funny? Imagine having like 5 people in a section in the arena. So the arena ends up having 40 fans, and then somehow somebody gets jobbed into standing room only.
It's like, why am I in section 301?
Yeah, what, the lower bowls are filled up? Come on, guys.
You probably hear that on the broadcast too, like some random dude in section 320 being like, what the hell, man? That's also one of the things they haven't really addressed, is how they're going to do the broadcast, because if it's a quiet arena, are they going to just blast music? Or are they just going to have the broadcasters be the only sound that you hear? Because you hear that in certain broadcasts. I think ESPN sometimes does that, where you only hear Breen, Jackson, and JVG, and you don't really hear as much of the court sounds and actions. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with that, because if you don't either implement a lot of arena sound or just focus on the broadcasters, you're going to be hearing a lot of stuff on the court that they don't want to have on TV, obviously. But us as fans, we would pay for that. I pay a subscription fee to hear everything that's happening on the court.
They're obviously going to have a delay on it, right? Even if they have music, even if the play-by-play and color commentators are going constantly, there's always dead air. It's basketball. It happens. But there has to be a delay. There's no way you're going to be hearing these guys dropping MFs at each other during the game. Or, on the other hand, you're not going to hear coaches giving out defensive strategies or offensive strategies, right? It's too much risk.
Yeah, it's going to be it's almost like watching pickup basketball, high quality pickup basketball, obviously with coaches and personnel and trainers that no pickup basketball games really have. But I think the environment's going to be interesting in the sense that we actually might see maybe a little more trash talking between players, people taking matters into their own hands. And I think when you have fans, sometimes you feel like you're held accountable by these fans, because there's 20,000 eyes on you, and obviously they know the cameras are on. But when you're in that room, when you're on that court and you see someone that you just don't like, or someone's talking trash to you, you might go at them. You might swear, or might like give them some of their own medicine. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out. I think in soccer, you can hear some of the players talking a bit more. It's not as exciting when they score goals, but I think it'll be interesting to see basketball because it's such a prideful sport.
Yeah, that'll be the other thing. Imagine if like Giannis goes up, posters somebody, he's like screaming, he's all hyped up, and it's like complete silence. It's only his teammates that are cheering, and that's it. You know what I mean? Like, it's going to be really strange because a lot of these guys feed off the energy from the crowd too, right?
Yeah, at the same time, I don't want to hear all that like music blasted into every single play, or if, you know, you designate the Lakers as the home team. I don't want to hear defense chants, like different defense chants throughout the game from like, you know, whatever they're using to implement that. Like, I don't want to hear that stuff.
Would you rather hear Laker girls or everybody clap your hands?
Same idea. I don't want to hear any of that stuff. Also, who are they going to bring down to actually announce who scores the basket? Like, is it going to be one specific guy that does every single game, or how does that work?
I think it'll end up being, I think they might be part of each team's traveling party, right?
So each team is going to bring in an announcer?
Why not? It's only one person. You get 35 people. Players eat up, 15, maybe 17 spots at most. Coaching staff another 10, let's say. Throw in a couple of media and PR people. And why not? Have one announcer, have a couple of people for water and towels. I'm more interested in, like, how are they going to regulate staff coming in and out of the hotels? Because I think the word is that they're all staying in one big-ass hotel at Disney World, which is kind of wild. Imagine having 22 teams up in one place.
Imagine the workout room in that hotel.
Yeah. That's the other thing. Like, when they come back, are you going to have them quarantined while they're still working out like they are now? Or are they going to go straight into team workouts since everyone's getting tested? These daily tests, are they the ones where you guys get swabbed up the nose up to like their brains? Like, you know what I mean? Like, does LeBron have to get swabbed every day for 90 days? That'd be insane.
That's what it seems like. That they're going to be tested like possibly even multiple times a day. And I've seen that test administered, and it's not fun. So those players are not going to be very happy about that, but that's, part of the price they'll have to pay to play basketball.
To make millions of dollars, yes. What do you guys think is going to be the biggest roadblock in terms of the league going on with this proposal? Like, if it wasn't going to go out this way, like, what would be the issue? Would it be player safety? Was it there's not enough hotel space? Was it going to be the situation drastically gets worse than the other states and they decide to pull out?
For me, I would say it's probably just health and safety, right? I just think that this could all really fall apart very quickly. I mean, even in Florida right now, they have the highest amount of cases I think they've had so far yesterday. So things are trending in the wrong direction right now.
What happens if Adam Silver gets it? Does Adam Silver even go?
No one's allowed to go.
We're just canceling everything. I don't know, guys. It'll be interesting. Logistically, obviously, we'll see, but I don't know, man. It'll be tough. I mean, it'll be fun to have basketball back, at least. Raj, have you been watching any Bundesliga footage?
Yeah, I've been watching a bit of games. It's just weird, honestly, watching it. Mainly because I didn't follow the Bundesliga much before, but when you see the without any fans, and it really feels a bit dry, and it feels like they're not as into it. But honestly, I'm all for seeing basketball. This is the longest I've probably gone in the last 10 years without constantly watching basketball.
Wait, what do you mean? The summers don't have basketball most of the time, man. What are you talking about?
But the summers aren't this long, though. NBA summers are what?
June to September?
Yeah, but
June
you got free
October.
agency. You got free agency. You got the draft. Like real basketball talk. Like here, like we're talking about a hypothetical of them maybe coming back on August 1st.
Josh, are you taking off all of August and September?
I think I'm going to have to now, yeah.
Might as well, right? Watch like 6 games a day.
Oh, absolutely. My off days, that's all I'll be doing now.
Just got to make up for lost time, right?
Got to scratch the itch.
It's gonna be like almost 5 months.
Yeah, and to be honest, I haven't watched a lot of basketball during this break. Like, I thought I was going to and go back and, like, I watched some of the Raptors run, like, when this first started. And I watched, like, maybe 2 or 3 classic games, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I think the initial shock was the hardest part. Like, on March 11, March 12, I guess. When all the news came down that the NBA was coming to a complete halt. I think that's when people were more in shock and trying to figure out how to get their sports content. But ever since, I mean, I haven't really watched much either. Obviously, we all watched The Last Dance, so that filled in some time throughout the week. But it wasn't exactly like watching something new.
Yeah, I think Last Dance was great timing. It definitely filled a void, but now I'm really missing it. And again, I just hope it comes back. It'll be weird watching it in the summer, but again, like, I'm all for basketball. If you told me the games are being played in like Iceland at like midnight to 6 a.m., I'd probably manage my schedule so I can watch a few games live.
Yeah, fair enough. You guys got anything else to add?
Yeah, I just want to quickly say something. I know you mentioned a bit about the Black Lives Matters movement, and I just want to chime in with my 2 cents. I think one great thing about sports is it sometimes brings up key social issues that society is not ready to have. In Kaepernick's case, around 5-6 years ago, he was bringing up the same issues that are now like everywhere you look on any social media page, all over the news, the protests, and athletes have a powerful voice, and us discussing sports is important as well. But there's obviously a bigger issue in the States and in Canada and all around the world around systemic discrimination. And before sport, it's about respecting people. And I really hope that our listeners are doing what they can to make sure that they're fighting this systemic discrimination that's found in our systems all across the globe, and also recognize that sports is really big in innovating and discussing issues. And sports was the main reason that COVID really took flight in North America in terms of shutting things down.
Yeah, and on that note, I mean, it's great that they've reopened some of the cases that they wouldn't have otherwise due to the protests, but they need a complete overhaul with the police unions especially. They're the ones blocking all these different changes. So, I mean, hopefully these protests will allow governments to somehow loosen whatever stranglehold the unions have on these rules. Like I've been watching and, reading different news articles, and I keep seeing the same problems where, like, certain police officers are getting written up for, certain abuses of their power. And yet, even despite being fired in some cases, like in Minnesota especially, they get brought back because the police unions are so strong and they have such a power stranglehold that these officers are brought back despite even having like 100 multiple complaints against them. It's crazy, and it needs a total overhaul. So again, it's great that certain progress has been made, but the system is broken and needs a major overhaul, like I said. And the videos that are coming out from the protests too, with police attacking protesters, like even tonight, seeing police push a man back in Buffalo and his head just hitting the canvas, and he's just bleeding profusely just from being out, a couple minutes past curfew, and them just not trying to peacefully, handle the situation. Just shows a lack of training and just a lack of morality, and the police systems in place are not good enough.
Yep, I couldn't have said it better myself, guys. Please remember, you can donate to all the Black Lives Matter movements. You can research. You can have discussions with your friends and family. Anything is big right now. You can support local shops. Anything you can do to spread the message is key right now. And I know that each of us, we're all doing our own thing here, but we're supporting any causes that we can. And on that note, I want to thank everyone for listening. Please remember to rate and subscribe to the pod, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, Anchor, all the major podcast platforms. Find us on Instagram and Twitter at Stretch4Pod. And on that note, I just want to say thanks and peace.